Reality bites. Finally, something you have to see from last night's game between the Leafs and Flames. Is Shane Corson having an equipment problem? What is he looking for? Actually, no joke, the puck got stuck in his pants. Eventually, the linesman had to pat him down and free the foreign body. Hey, Shane, is that a puck in your pants, or are you just happy to see me?
Oh, nice. I was going to say, insert joke here.
There you go.
That's too easy. You're the best. Thank you, buddy.
All right.
Thank you, Fred.
Well, that's it for us.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw next.
Race and politics. President Bush weighs in on a critical issue, saying the University of Michigan's affirmative action admissions program is unconstitutional. Showdown with Iraq. From Capitol Hill to Britain's Parliament, the growing debate over war. Is it really necessary now? In depth, exclusive pictures of North Korea's darkest secret, 3 generations of political prisoners. And betrayal of trust. An entire community tried to help a little girl said to be dying of cancer, then learned it was a hoax. How could a mother make up such a story?
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. President Bush tonight took on a high-profile and highly controversial affirmative action case, and his strong words are expected to have a major effect on the political and legal debate over the place of race in higher education. The case here involves the University of Michigan plan, which will be challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court tomorrow. Tonight, the president proclaimed it unconstitutional. We'll hear his argument shortly, but first, NBC Pete Williams takes us through the Michigan formula.
The president tonight said his administration will oppose the admissions program at the University of Michigan and side with white students who argue that it's unconstitutional.
At their core, the Michigan policies amount to a quota system that unfairly rewards or penalizes prospective students based solely on their race.
For undergraduates, Michigan scores applicants on a scale of 1 to 150, with points for grades, test scores, relationships with alumni, state of residence, and other factors. Minority students get an automatic 20 extra points, boosting their chances of admission. The law school does not use a fixed point system, but the school strives to admit what it calls a critical mass of minority students, which turns out to be around 12 to 14% of each class. Michigan's former president, now at Columbia University, says increasing the enrollment of minority students, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, makes the campus more diverse, improving the quality of education.
Learning how to see the world through other people's eyes is essential to a good education in today's society.
President Bush today says those goals can be met in other ways, such as admitting the top high school graduates, as Texas, California, and Florida do. But without affirmative action, civil rights leaders say minority enrollment would sink dramatically.
If we really want to do something to ensure that we have continued access to higher education for Black and Latino students, the best way to do it is to go about doing it consciously.
Groups that oppose affirmative action argue that it's wrong to assume that racial diversity automatically brings a diversity of ideas.
The government is forbidden from acting on those type of stereotypes and must look at individual candidates to try to bring about educational diversity.
Tonight, administration officials say the government's brief will sidestep the larger question, whether using race in admissions is always unconstitutional, no matter how it's done. Pete Williams, NBC News at the Supreme Court.
This is a volatile and complex issue, and the decision of the president to make such a bold statement raises the political stakes considerably. NBC's David Gregory tonight on the president's position and how he reached it.
Today, the president tried to walk a fine line through a political minefield. On one hand, the president opposed Michigan's affirmative action policy, but he refused to take a stand on whether race could ever be a factor in college admissions.
We should not be satisfied with the current numbers of minorities on Americans' college campuses. Much progress has been made. Much more is needed.
Officials say the president was torn between advice from his top Supreme Court lawyer, Ted Olson, and other conservatives who called on him to oppose using race as a preference in college admissions, and others, including White House counsel Al Gonzalez, political strategist Karl Rove, and advisor Karen Hughes, who advocated a more moderate position that would not alienate Black and Latino voters, groups the Republican Party is actively trying to court. Today, Democrats were eager to keep the pressure on.
They have to decide whether they're for civil rights and diversity or not.
The issue took on more urgency for the White House after Senator Trent Lott's racially charged comments led to his resignation as majority leader and to calls on the Republican Party to make amends to the Black community. But Democrats say the president has failed to do that.
The message he's sending, at best, can be considered uneven and inconsistent.
One potential inconsistency, the president's own hiring practices at the White House. While the issue of whether the president supports using race at all in college admissions remains unclear tonight, Mr. Bush's personnel director said 2 years ago race was a factor in White House appointments. Clay Johnson told the Washington Post, quote, "The president is very committed to diversity of thought, of professional background, or geography, ethnicity, and gender. It's a constant challenge." In the end, the president apparently tried to steer a safe political course. But for now, he's only opened himself up to more criticism from many African Americans and left unanswered some critical questions about the future of affirmative action. David Gregory, NBC News, the White House.
Coincidentally, the president's statement came on the birth date of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was born 74 years ago today. Meanwhile, the pressure is growing on the administration to make a clear-cut case for war against Iraq, and today that pressure came from prominent Republicans on Capitol Hill. NBC's Norah O'Donnell tonight on Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld's defensive answers to GOP heavyweights.
Today, Donald Rumsfeld was grilled by senators on Capitol Hill, fed up with what they say is too much Pentagon secrecy on Iraq and North Korea.
The reason tough questions are asked is because this is a tough situation without any easy answers.
Congressional sources say the classified closed-door meeting began with Rumsfeld on the defensive, fighting charges that he has not yet presented enough proof to justify war with Iraq, and insisting he and others have had more than 150 face-to-face meetings with senators.
I have trouble understanding exactly how one could make more appearances or more regular appearances.
But even the incoming chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Republican John Warner, today said it's the quality of the information that matters, and that can still be strengthened.
I firmly believe, and this is my personal view, that this situation with regard to Iraq and to North Korea is among the most serious that I've ever witnessed in my over 30 years in public service.
Privately, Warner has told the White House that the Vietnam War should serve as a lesson, saying secrecy led to the collapse of support and violent opposition. Still, other Republicans say more can be done by the White House.
We want to make sure that we have the information to make the right decision.
Another problem, say Democrats, the failure of the White House to deliver a report on Iraq to Congress, as required by law under the joint resolution passed in October.
There is a growing frustration about the administration's unwillingness to include the Congress, about its unwillingness to work with the Congress.
In the 2-hour meeting with Rumsfeld, sources say senators also raised doubts about whether America faces a greater threat from al-Qaeda and North Korea than Iraq. Norah O'Donnell, NBC News, the Capitol.
In less than 2 weeks, the UN inspection team is scheduled to report on its findings to the Security Council. A few days after that, on January 31st, British Prime Minister Tony Blair will meet with President Bush at Camp David to discuss what's next. NBC's Keith Miller reports tonight on the intense political and public pressure on Blair for his support of Mr. Bush and a possible war on Iraq.
Tony Blair seems as if he's already at war. On the defensive today in Parliament, as he faced sharp questions on his position on Iraq.
A lot of the British people are against the war because they can see that it's all about America getting their hands on the oil supplies in the Middle East.
Angered, Blair said, no way. Security is the issue, not oil.
Because the threat is real, and if we don't deal with it, then the consequences are our weakness will haunt future generations.
Royal Royal Marines were shipping out today, even as Blair faced a revolt in his own party. An overwhelming 80% want backing from the United Nations before going to war.
I think there's a great danger for Prime Minister Blair that the effect on the party will be catastrophic.
And Blair has a battle on a second front, public opinion. Just 13% of the people support a war without a UN resolution endorsing it. Even in Aldershot, the home base for the British Army, many feel Blair hasn't laid out a convincing case. At the Aldershot Star, Alan Franklin received the very first letter opposing war in the 19 years that he's been the editor.
The mood is not as it would normally be when a country's going to war. I don't detect a kind of patriotic fervour that you would normally expect.
Chris Isles, a 31-year-old math teacher, wrote the letter.
People are being more and more cynical about the reasons and the justifications for going to war.
HMS Ark Royal is setting sail for the Gulf ready for war, even if the Prime Minister doesn't have the public support to wage it. Keith Miller, NBC News, London.
Meanwhile, there's another intriguing piece of news from the Arab world tonight. Egypt's President Hosni Mubarak said today he'll be meeting in Cairo this weekend with one of Saddam Hussein's most trusted confidants. Some believe this could be a part of an effort by the Arab states to work out some kind of a deal to get Saddam out of power and avoid what they see as a disastrous war. Back in this country, the perils of military action, split-second decisions, and confusing situations brought a dramatic moment to a courtroom at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. 2 American pilots face charges for firing on Canadian troops on the ground in Afghanistan last spring, killing 4. NBC Jim Miklashevsky tonight's at the Pentagon. Jim, what do you have for us?
Tom, in today's testimony, 4 Canadians who survived the bombing say during a live-fire exercise on the ground, they never aimed their guns into the air. But in a dramatic cockpit tape released in court, it shows that the 2 U.S. pilots thought they were under fire. The 2 pilots were near the end of their mission when they reported coming under attack.
I've got some men on a road, and it looks like a piece of artillery firing at us. I am rolling in self-defense.
The pilots didn't wait for permission from controllers before releasing their bomb.
Bombs away, cranking left.
Seconds later, controllers try to wave the pilots off the target.
Disengage. Friendlies can't harm.
But it was too late. The pilot sensed potential tragedy.
I hope that was the right thing to do.
Me too.
The 2 pilots charged with involuntary manslaughter say they were never told in advance Canadians were in the area and that their judgment was influenced by go pills, amphetamines given to combat pilots to help keep them awake. Tom.
Thanks very much, NBC's Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon tonight. On Wall Street today, disappointing earnings news from Intel and DuPont helped send stocks sharply lower. The Dow was down more than 119 points on the day. NASDAQ lost more than 22 points on the day. Up next, NBC News in depth tonight. Inside these innocent-looking buildings, one of North Korea's darkest secrets, political prisoners treated with terrible inhumanity. We have an NBC News exclusive investigation. And later, is a teenager in your family a menace on the road? New driving schools just for kids so they won't learn the hard way.
Excuse me. No-load mutual funds from T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence.
NBC News in depth tonight. The latest on the situation in North Korea. U.S. offers of talks and possible food and energy aid in exchange for the North abandoning its nuclear program were rejected today. North Korea's foreign ministry releasing a statement calling the overture, quote, loudmouthed and pie in the sky, and accusing Washington of creating a deceptive drama to try to sway world opinion. The White House played down those remarks, saying it's another in a string of unfortunate pronouncements to come out of North Korea. At the same time, tonight, an NBC News exclusive investigation into one of North Korea's darkest secrets, prison camps, where tens of thousands of people are treated with great cruelty. In depth, here's NBC senior investigative correspondent, Lisa Myers.
Miles beyond a closely guarded border, hidden in the mountains, North Korea's most notorious concentration camp, Camp 22. These satellite photos broadcast tonight for the first time on American television.
This is Hainyang 22 camp.
An Myong-chol, a guard at the camp for 7 years before he escaped, confirms the photos show the vast complex that U.S. intelligence estimates holds 50,000 political prisoners. Their only crime, U.S. officials say, offending the regime of Kim Jong-il or his father.
This is the detention center. If someone goes inside this building in 3 months, he will be dead or disabled for life.
An points out where prisoners are executed and buried.
If people start to farm here, they find bodies or bones.
Human rights activist David Hawk, who's interviewed some 30 former prisoners and guards, calls the satellite images an enormous breakthrough, since North Korea denies these camps even exist.
The photo is verification of the prisoner testimony.
President Bush told reporter Bob Woodward last year he'd seen classified satellite photos of Kim Jong-il's camps.
I have seen intelligence of, these prison camps that he uses to break up families and to torture people.
Kang Chol-won says he was 10 when imprisoned along with 3 generations of his family after his grandfather was declared a traitor.
I had to work even though I was malnourished, and they beat me, but I could overcome it by making incredible efforts to survive.
The witnesses say most do not survive, forced to work long hours and fed only a handful of corn a day.
You have 10, 20, 30% of the prisoners who are dying of slave labor. So literally people are being worked to death.
Sunok Lee still suffers from years of torture. The left side of her face is paralyzed. This hole in her hand from being hung by her wrists and beaten.
They trampled on me so strongly that my teeth were broken and my eyeball came out and I put it back in the socket again.
She says women were sexually brutalized and most children aborted.
If someone delivers a live infant, then the guards kick the bloody baby and kill it.
It's one of the worst, if not the worst human rights abuse situation in the world today.
The North Korean government would not comment today. U.S. intelligence estimates some 200,000 prisoners are now in camps. And officials say barring a total collapse of the regime, nothing is likely to change. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
For more on this story, including the full transcripts of eyewitness interviews, log on to our website at msnbc.com. Up next, an astonishing hoax involving a 7-year-old girl, her mother, and cancer.
When you have acid reflux disease,
Aspirin, trust it with all your heart.
We're here showing folks how a packet of Hidden Valley Ranch changes spinach dip into ranch spinach dip.
I like it. Really, it's different.
And changes salsa into ranch salsa.
It's jazzy, pizzazzy.
Hidden Valley Ranch. This changes everything.
Magnificent. Your creation?
Yes. We took the taste of fresh-baked raisin cinnamon bread.
Lenny.
For new Quaker Raisin Cinnamon Swirl Oatmeal. So good, you'll wonder where we got the recipe.
Rich, delicious V8 vegetable juice has a full serving of vegetables. Because sometimes what you eat doesn't. V8. Drink smarter.
35,000 dentists think enough of Crest White Strips to sell them in their offices. 10 million people have tried them. 4 out of 5 would recommend them. Crest White Strips. The secret to a whiter smile is in the strip.
Still doing those bills, hon?
Just wrestling with a credit card balance. You've been feeding on those high interest rates.
I just switched our balance over to a Capital One no-hassle card. We're gonna save $500 a year.
$500?
Switch your high-interest balance to the Capital One no-hassle card for the nation's lowest long-term fixed rates. You could save up to $500 a year.
What's in your wallet?
Tonight on the Channel 4 News at 11, her head and her hands cut off. Tonight, who was that woman whose body was found dumped along a Southland highway? We're live with the latest. Also, windy and warm, and that has firefighters on alert tonight. We'll show you the special precautions being taken to prevent wildfires at 11.
Teenagers may be defensive about this, but everyone knows they are dangerous behind the wheel. Teenage drivers, after all, make up less than 7% of the driving population and account for more than 14% of the fatal accidents. As every parent knows, lectures are not enough. So now in Atlanta, parents are shelling out big bucks for a kind of driver's ed plus. NBC's Don Teague.
Saturday morning at Road Atlanta.
Drive as quickly as you can.
Where a group of teenage drivers
and then hard, quick braking.
Would rather not be. Over the next 2 days, these kids will learn some hard realities about their abilities behind the wheel.
Go.
Lesson number 1. Stop. They're dangerous.
They think they were actually a good driver when they got here, and they realized very quickly that they weren't.
This is not a racing school. These teenagers are learning defensive driving.
Okay, 2 wheels off. Right, turn the steering wheel.
How to stay in control of their cars under unexpected situations, recovering from a spin on wet roads.
Good try.
Reacting to obstacles and emergency braking.
Off the gas.
Among the students, 17-year-old Ashley Clarkin.
I had a friend who just totaled her car, and my boyfriend got in an accident not too long ago.
So Ashley and her father, Chris, figured $875 for this course might be money well spent.
It's expensive. There's no question it's expensive, but it's an investment in your child.
An investment that a growing number of parents are making here in Atlanta and at racetracks in Florida, Texas, and Canada. Highway officials say inexperienced drivers are a bigger problem than you might think. In fact, traffic accidents are the leading cause of death in people 15 to 20 years old. Many of those accidents caused by young people driving beyond the limits of their cars. Georgia State Trooper Frank Fearman has seen it too many times.
They don't think much of themselves. You know, when you're that young, you're invincible. Nothing can happen to you.
Not so graduates of this school.
Actually, you can see a noticeable improvement in the student.
Who've learned how quickly things can go wrong.
Do your correction. Quick. Even Superman couldn't have saved that.
And how to make them right.
You've got it. Nice control. Excellent job. Excellent.
Don Teague, NBC News, Atlanta.
That's nightly news for Wednesday. I'll see you tomorrow night.